Hi, this is Dan Eisner here with Key Insight Coaching, and I'm back with the 7 gateways to unlocking your inner peace and potential. And today we're talking about gateway number 6, the law of attraction, understanding the basics. A lot of people became familiar, including myself, with the law of attraction when the infamous movie The Secret came out several years ago. You may or may not have heard of this movie and the book, but basically what it talked about it, if you just focus on things, you can get whatever you want. You want a car, you just focus on it, you can get the car and whatever it is that you want. Now, the truth is, the movie The Secret, it did a lot of good for the world in the sense that it introduced us to this idea of the law of attraction, but it didn't really do a great job about explaining what the law of attraction really is. And what I found out in my research is that the Esther and Jerry Hicks are responsible for the law of attraction. Most of the law of attraction resources that are out there actually got themselves removed from any identification with the movie The Secret, and I don't know the exact reasons behind it, but my guess is that because the movie The Secret, while it did a lot of good, it didn't really speak to the true message of what the law of attraction really is. But it was a great thing in the sense that it really brought the law of attraction to public attention, and it got a lot of people really interested in really learning about what that is. So today we're going to talk a little bit about the basics of it. We can, this is one of these topics, like many of the others that we discuss, that run very, very, very deep. But we're going to talk about what I believe to be are the key components to the law of attraction, the things that really mean the most. The basic premise of the law of attraction is that we attract into our experience whatever we think about most of the time. This is the basic idea. Our external world is a direct reflection of what's going on internally. Now, when people first hear this, including myself, there's usually a very common complaint. And the complaint is this: but I don't think about that. It's not what I want. Well, as we've talked about before, most of us are not very aware of what we think about most of the time. And one of the most valuable things I've learned from investigating the law of attraction is that there are two aspects to what we want. There's what we want. As an example, I want internal peace. And when we focus on wanting internal peace, we're basically focusing on what we want. But there's also lack of what we want. And what a lot of us do is, I don't want to be stressed. And that's when we're doing that, we're really running away from what we don't want. Now, as we've talked about in previous videos, we're pretty unconscious to what we're thinking and feeling most of the time. So even though we might want internal peace, the truth is we're not actually focusing on that a lot of the times. So as an example, I want happiness, but work is just too stressful. Or I want a great relationship, but he or she just doesn't listen. They don't do what I want them to do. Or I want peace of mind, but I just have too many things going on. Or I want confidence, but he's always putting me down. Or I want to slow down, but there's just no time. So to get the idea, we often, what we want, even though we know what we want, we're often focused on lack of having what we want. And again, this is an unconscious thing, and this is this is the primary reason why so many of us are attracting the things that we don't necessarily want in our lives. We're just not aware of how we're thinking and feeling beneath the surface. Well, another basic premise about the law of attraction is that it's really all about energy. And the idea is that all thoughts and emotions come in the form of vibration or energy. The more positive a thought, the higher the vibration or the higher the energy. The more negative the thought, the lower the vibration, the lower the energy. And the idea about the law of attraction is we can only attract whatever's matching kind of what we're thinking and feeling. So a common example is, if you've ever, felt like, I feel incredibly depressed right now, and had somebody say something to you like, you're great, you should love yourself. If you're like me, you probably noticed that not only does it not help, but it actually hurts. And the reason is because when you're feeling incredibly depressed, your energy or vibration, you're at like a zero. And, you should love yourself. Well, that's at an energy of like 100. And so there's too much of an energy gap between what you're thinking and the thought that's being, proposed, that we can't even tolerate that. But the good news is that, and this is one of the main things that they teach in the law of attraction, is that we have what's called an emotional guidance scale. And these are 22 different levels sort of emotions that, and we're going to go through a little experience in just a second here to illustrate that. But the idea is that if we can train ourselves to kind of understand what this scale is and train ourselves to recognize where we are on that scale, what we can do is we can consciously choose thoughts and actions that are going to slowly but steadily raise our energy or raise our vibration. So I'm going to go through this list here in a second. What I'd like you to do is just kind of close your eyes and just pay attention to these words as I say them, starting right now. Fear, grief, depression, despair. Insecurity, guilt, or unworthiness. Jealousy, hatred or rage. Revenge, angry, discouraged, blame, worry, doubt, disappointed, overwhelmed, frustration, pessimism, boredom, contentment, hopefulness, optimism, positive expectation or belief, enthusiasm, eagerness, or happiness, passion, joy, knowledge, empowerment, freedom, love, appreciation. Go ahead and open your eyes. Now, as I read those, you might have noticed, and most people do, that it kind of went from negative to positive. You probably felt a change in your energy just as I read those words. Well, this is basically the emotional guidance scale, and there's about 22 different emotions on there. The idea is, again, when we know where we are, we can work our way up the scale by choosing thoughts that make us feel a little bit better. So as an example, like we talked about before, if I'm feeling really depressed, I probably can't tolerate a thought like, I should love myself. That's too much of an energy gap. But I might be able to say something like, you know what, I felt this way before and it doesn't last that long. Or I'm angry that I feel this way. Now you might say, well, that's not a very healthy or happy thought. It's true, saying I'm angry isn't a healthy or happy emotion, but if you notice, if you pay attention, there's more of an energy to it. And when we're feeling really depressed, our energy is so low, we don't have any energy to do anything else. And a very common mistake that we make is we don't like to be angry. We feel like we shouldn't be angry. But when we use our anger, productively, when we recognize it's okay to feel that way, we can choose thoughts and actions to release our anger, whether it's punching a pillow or doing whatever we have to do, and recognize that can often be a very healthy thing, is to go through a phase where we're feeling angry. Again, we don't want to stay there, and then we might work ourselves up that scale by saying things like, it's her fault that I'm feeling this way, or it's his fault that I'm feeling this way. Again, not a great emotion, but still working our way up the scale. And one of the things that they teach is that each one of us, these are just guidelines to follow. Each one of us has to kind of use our own internal barometer to kind of know whatever's kind of working us in the right direction. So we have to figure it out for ourselves. If you think something and it makes you feel a little bit better, well, that's a really good indication that that's a thought that's working you up the scale. If it's making you feel a little bit worse, well, that's a pretty good indication that you're going in the wrong direction. So the basic idea is, if we get really familiar with the scale and we get in the habit of reaching for thoughts and behaviors that can sort of work our way up, as we do that, we literally raise our energy, we raise our vibration, and we raise what they call our point of attraction. And the higher our vibration, or the higher the point of our attraction is, the more likely we are to attract the types of experiences that we want to have in our lives. This is one of these things that really kind of works beneath the surface, but it's very powerful. And I like to give some very common examples of how this works. And one of the examples that I give is, I live in the city, and I live in Baltimore, and Baltimore can be a very dangerous place. Now, I don't worry about crime at all. I'm aware that crime happens, but it's not something that I think about at all. Now, I know people that think about crime a lot. They're worried about crime a lot. And what's interesting is I've been here for 5 years, and knock on wood, I've never really been the victim of a crime. Now, think about, as we talked about, the basic idea is that we're going to get what we think about, whether we like it or not. On a very practical, thinking about it very practically, if I'm walking down the street and maybe I'm in a not such a great area, but I'm not thinking about crime at all, think about how differently I'm going to look than someone who unconsciously or maybe consciously kind of is really worried, is really kind of worried something may happen, they might get mugged or something like that. Just imagine the difference in how I would look versus how someone who's a little bit concerned about that would look. It's very easy to see how they're going to really put off a very different vibe or a very different energy. Again, it's one of these things that's very practical, but it's one of the things that we don't really think about just how much of an effect that it has, on what we attract into our lives. So this is, again, just a basic introduction to the law of attraction and how we can start to use that to our advantage. I hope that you got some great value out of it. I highly recommend you checking out, a lot of the law of attraction resources. There's a ton of great videos online that you can watch, and a ton of great books that you can buy and CDs as well. And I hope this was a great introduction. Again, you got a lot out of it. And I will be back soon with gateway number 7 in the near future. Thanks so much for watching.